Hey, hockey fans, welcome to the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Retta. There are so many great players who played the great game of hockey over the past few decades. Players who made an impact not only on the game itself, the teammates, the fans, the sport. On this week's show, we're joined by one of hockey's biggest personalities, a 15-year veteran in the NHL, Stanley Cup Champion, the New York Rangers. Since his retirement in 2001, he's continued to be a big presence in hockey, served as the Director of Player Affairs for the NHLPA from 2007 to 2009. He's been a color analyst for TSN, CBC, Rogers. He'll take cash wherever they'll send it. And in 2017, he has served as the Executive Director of the NHL Alumni Association. We're pleased to welcome Glenn Healy. Healy, Hills, great to talk to you again, my friend.
Well, Gino, thank you very much. Really appreciate the fact you got me fired from TSN. And then I had to go somewhere else. So that's the reason, the long list. But hey, I enjoyed working with you guys and the group at TSN. And I remember the very first day that we got the rights. And it was going to be a national show. And we had that first rehearsal. We had the band, had the monkeys.
The puppets.
We had, like, it was a complete circus. And I thought, how are we going to pull this off? Oh, I forgot the rink too. Yeah, the rink as well.
We did. We had the fake ice.
And now James Duthie won't talk to us. I mean,
he's a wheel.
Whatever.
He's a wheel. And in the hall, when we pass each other, he just kind of, because he's forgotten my name.
The first guy that I know had his own dressing room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I had my own parking spot. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. It took me years after. I think I've got your old spot when you left. No, I think I got your spot.
I was right up front. It said visitor. And I used to park there all the time, and security would come in and go, is anybody driving, a Honda Accord and parked in visitor?
There's never a time in your life where you drove a Honda Accord, you liar.
My first car in Los Angeles was it was a Ford Escort with no air conditioning.
Oh, how'd you do a Ford Escort with no AC in California? How's that freaking possible?
Bad mistake. That's called Alan Eagleson and not making any money. And then I had the Honda Accord, which was $111 a month. And that thing got so bad that if you put $10 of gas in, $5 would just leak out of the tank. And it became like a flipped coin to see whether my wife or I were going to go to the gas station. No, you go. No, you go. No. And it broke down in Long Island when I played with the Islanders. And I took the plates off and I left it on the road. And I don't know what has ever happened to it.
My first car was a 1967 Dodge Corvette 440, but I got it way into its lifespan. And I remember there was officially a tipping point where filling the tank with gas made the car more valuable than it was on empty.
Oh, yeah.
So I knew it was time.
Mine would have been more value too if I could have kept all the gas I tried to put in the car in the tank. But and every time I pull up the gas station, someone would say, "Hey, buddy, you're leaking gas there." I'd be like, "I know, shut up. Just give me a minute. I'll get out of here."
We've come a long way, brother. Your first NHL deal, what was it, like $70K? Your first NHL contract?
I was a complete super sleuth negotiator. They used to have three-way deals early on.
I was not aware there was a three-way deal.
You would have your NHL deal, so $70,000 in the NHL, which I thought was an enormous amount of money, more than any Healy had ever made in their lifetime. And you would make $23,000 if you played in the minors. But they also had a third component that if they sent you to the IHL, you could make a grand total of about $11,000. Oh, and I negotiated this massive contract of only having the two-way deal. And that was me thinking I was Gordon Gekko, like I had arrived. Look out.
Do you not find that amazing? I think you're in a similar situation to mine. Your parents immigrated from Europe, same as my parents did, from different parts of Europe, obviously. But I remember signing my first deal at TSN, and I told my dad how much I was going to pay in taxes that year. And he said, I've never made that much in a year. Like the salaries that our parents made compared to what we ended up making in our careers, it just kind of throws you for a loop, doesn't it?
My dad fought in World War II for 5 years for free. His last day in the British military was when they blew up the King David Hotel. I've got a picture of him on the hotel.
He was serving 5 years. Like he had to serve the full 5 years in the war.
Well, after the war was over, we still had peacekeeping. It was still going on. And that might've been the first terrorist act in Palestine with the King David Hotel getting blown up. And so he was forced to continue that on. And then it was a choice: come to Canada, no job, £2 to emigrate. Think about that. Right? The Niner Diner at TSN, you can't even buy anything there for £2. Okay. Not even the gravy boss, okay, who he asked me every day when I ordered a Caesar if I wanted gravy.
Gravy on that, yeah.
Thanks, buddy. Anyways, or stay in Scotland, no job, no money. So they came to Canada. But yeah, a big difference. A funny story as we have the World Cup of Soccer on. So, clearly Scottish family, soccer, football is a big part of what we were all about. And I signed a big contract. I turned the worm here. So I went way past the 72 and had deals with an M on the end. And
nice.
I signed with the Rangers. And my dad was aghast that I would sign with, because again, Celtic, Rangers, right?
Yes. Oh, even the name, even though completely unrelated.
Yeah. So I signed with the Rangers, and he was so concerned about what my family would say back in Scotland. Then I told him the amount, and he basically goes, I don't give an F what they think. Go sign that deal.
What did he think when you said you wanted to be a goalie? Like, how did that happen? Like, I had Marty Brodeur on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I've spoken to Roberto Luongo, and both of them say, I was never meant to be a goalie. I was 10 or 11 years old before I ever went in the net. How did that happen to you?
So I played when I first started playing the age groups. It was a Catholic hockey league called the Holy Redeemer. We were the Holy Redeemer Flyers, feared throughout the land. Well, not really, but the age groups were 4 to 9. So the 9-year-olds were really good, and the 4-year-olds were really stinky. But we were all playing together, and so
you're on the same ice surface with 9-year-olds?
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's a Catholic league. I mean, we're just trying to get some teams together here. Okay. We can't be choosy now. So, you would work on the buzzer system. So you would get on the ice, you play your 2 minutes, and buzzer would go off. You go make your way back to the bench, and you're back on again.
Yeah.
I never got to the bench, got off, or got back on. I couldn't skate. And so I spent the whole year, I never touched the puck once. And I remember I had a pair of Gordie House skates, and at the end of the year, the coach asked my dad, my dad's name was Joe, did you ever get those skates sharpened? And my dad had that blank look like, sharpened? What do you mean? You need to get your skates sharpened? So I spent the whole year without any sharpening on my skates. So
that's hilarious.
We needed a goalie. So my dad thought, in his infinite wisdom, make him a goalie. Let the puck come to him. So he was a coaching genius in a lot of ways. And that's how it started. And like probably the other goaltenders, my first set of pads, you're not going to believe this, Gino, but they actually fell off a truck at the Legion in Pickering. So what
I've heard, I've had stuff fall off trucks.
So here I was as a 6-year-old kid with goalie pads that were fit for a 15-year-old.
Oh, beautiful. Horsehair? Were they the old horsehair ones where they get wet and they weigh 58 pounds each?
The Titanic in the net. Like, I couldn't move. And it was okay until I turned about 15, and then they were below my knees, and I was getting hit with pucks in the knee. And again, the Healy.
You always wore the small pads, though.
Oh, that's probably I was preconditioned based on frugality and cheapness, and the fact we had no money. Just keep wearing them. So I did recall going to my mom and dad saying, "I'm getting hurt. I'm getting hit in the knees.
We need to do something here.
We need to do something." And my dad calmly looked at me and just told me to catch the pucks and shut up. So then I became pretty good with a glove hand, because I had to catch the pucks or end up at an emergency room. So, and
you made a career. Like, you ended up, you had an opportunity to play in the OHL, but you didn't go that route. You went the Western Michigan route. What was that all about?
Well, there was a couple of factors. One, I met with the coach at the Peterborough at the time, was Mike Keenan. So I had my first introduction to him. And I thought playing for the
welcome to hockey.
Attila the Hun wouldn't be a good thing. So let's get away from him. But beyond that, it was.
Did he ever smile? Did you ever see him smile?
Mike?
I never saw him smile. I worked with him for years. I covered him for years. I never saw him smile.
You get him about 15 beers and he smiles, or maybe he doesn't even know he's lost all the feeling in his face.
Oh, he just kind of
can't have that grumpy Sutter look anymore. But the reality was, I wanted to get an education. And my parents pushed me that way too, because if you learn, you earn, and it's a lot of pressure away from me making the NHL. I didn't have to worry about making it. If I didn't make it, I had 2 degrees from Western Michigan, which which would equate, I guess, to like a babysitting degree. But I had enough that if it didn't work out for me, that I could go out and enjoy that next journey. But it did work out, and so in some ways, the career was enhanced by the fact the pressure was off because I had something to fall back on. But I was going to college right from the start. It was not. I'm not flipping
awesome.
and trying to make it. I was going to go and make it and get a degree, and it was a great 4 years, best that I had.
Full disclosure, we're in conversation with Glenn Healy, executive director of the NHL Alumni Association, 15 years in the league. I got to cover your career, the latter part of your career when I was in broadcasting, and some pretty successful runs. And I'll tell you, one of the great memories you gave me was the Stanley Cup's the Stanley Cup. But the year before that, you playing for the Islanders and you're in the playoffs. I covered the Pens back-to-back Stanley Cups in 91 and 92. Ridiculously talented team, obviously, led by Mario and Yager and those guys. And you guys faced them in the playoffs. And I'm like, okay, well, all the prognosticators know that the Isles have got no chance against the Pens. And then things start to unfold in that series like I've rarely seen in the Stanley Cup playoffs before. Walk me through what your mindset was going into that series, because I know what my mindset was. This is a walk. This is a no-brainer. And you're facing two-time Stanley Cup champion Penguins in the playoffs in 93.
Well, so if you recall, we had our best player was Pierre Turgeon, and we defeated the Washington.
I just bumped into him a couple of weeks ago at the Legends game at the Hall of Fame stuff.
Looks like he could still play.
He's in great shape.
You know, Pepe scored what would have been the series clinching goal against Washington with just over a minute or so left. And 45 minutes after he had scored his goal and celebrated, and he was in the shower having a shower, that's when Hunter decided to hit him from behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating.
But Heels is joking here, but it was an extremely late hit. Today, if he does that today, Heels, he's gone for life.
So that was a disappointing thing because we lost our best player. And so we go to play the Pittsburgh Penguins, and you're right, they had a number of Hall of Famers, Yager and this Lemieux guy. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but man, he was good.
Thank God you're still not in broadcasting.
Francis, and they had everybody. And that sound you hear was when we'd open our locker room door, it was like the sound of goats, like, man, lambs to slaughter. How are we going to beat this team? And it was Al Arbor who actually took a chair and he sat in the middle of the room and he sat everyone down and he went to Pat Flatley and he said, Flats, and he called him Secretariat because Flats had the skinniest legs. Proud of that because Secretariat had skinny legs too, and he was really fast and Flats wasn't. But he asked him if he could just tie one shift against Mario. Just tie it. Of course, the answer is yes, I could tie it.
One shift.
Then he went to Ray Ferraro, who was the seagull. Because if he wasn't squawking, he was okay.
I'm jotting down all these nicknames for when I have these guys on the show.
Oh, could you tie a shift against Mario? Yes, I could tie a shift. And as we went around the room, good, period one done. Now go to period two. We did it again. Rinse and repeat. And then it came down to, guys, all we need to do is win one shift in game 7 in overtime. And we win the series. And
nice math.
3 young defense, Vasky, Kasparidis, and Malakoff, all rookies. We had no position even being on the ice with that team. And yet it came down to game 7, and Pittsburgh Penguins defenseman stepped on the ice on a change, took a step forward instead of a step backwards, and that jumped Ferraro and Volek to a 2-on-1, and David put the puck in the net. And it was, again, probably one of the bigger upsets in a lot of ways. And, the ownership there, they wanted David Volek traded all year. And I can recall standing with Al in Pittsburgh, down by where the bus is. He was very elated that he had beat the great Scotty Bowman because Scotty had all the best teams, right? Good team.
Scotty would tell you that, yeah.
Montreal might have been a good team in the 60s and 70s. I don't know. As an analyst, I'll say they were pretty good. And so here we were, we beat them. He was happy with that. And the ownership came down and they were elated. And Al looked at them and basically, other than tell them to get lost, said, what do you think of David effing Volek now? Because they wanted him traded all year. But it was a complete upset in a lot of ways. And in fact, going to game 7, we won in game 6. So we stayed alive. And in game 7, we didn't even have a flight booked. So we had to fly out of 2 different airports.
Because you thought there was no chance.
No chance. What?
No
We got to
chance.
book a flight. Okay. So
Save the money.
Half flew out of LaGuardia, half flew out of MacArthur, and we landed in Pittsburgh and got on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and then made our way to what would have been game 7. But yeah, it was an exciting time. And I looked at that group and all of us, we to this day are still a close group, and we still stick together, and we still probably look at that team, even the Stanley Cup team in '94. We look at that group with as fond a memory as the team that won a championship the next year.
What a legend, Al Arbor. Like you kind of skirted by like the guy was just a legend. It's just like story after story of the kind of stuff like that he's been able to do.
Second father to a lot of guys.
Yeah.
When you needed to have your his arm put around you, he did. He helped you through a lot of different things in life. He wanted us to be not great players, but great ambassadors. And he gave us some real life lessons. But when you were full of yourself and thought you were all that in a bag of chips, he was the first one to stick his foot so far up your ass you were flossing your teeth with your shoelace. Oh, I guess.
The visual. Oh, the visual, Heels. Thanks for that, brother.
No problem. But that was Al. But he was a wonderful man. And, before he died, there were a number of us, and Ray Ferraro was one of them, and Pat Flatley, and Mully, we all went down to see him. I didn't want to wait till someone has a funeral and then we show up and show reverence there. I wanted to tell him what I really thought of because he made it my life, and we did. And flew down, met with him, and flew back the same days. And I'm so glad we made that trip.
In conversation with Glenn Healy, executive director of the NHL Alumni Association today, 15-year NHL veteran. And you mentioned the Cup final, obviously, one of the pinnacles of your career. People often wonder, how did Heels go from a major successful playoff run with the New York Islanders to the New York Rangers? Probably like that whole transition of that is in and of itself insane. What's crazier is the way the deal, the trade actually transpired. Do you want to walk us through? Because that was the expansion draft year. Do you want to walk us through that, or do you want me to give the background of that?
I think it started with, I had a contract that was due and it was expired.
Yeah.
And my good buddy, Pat Flatley, decided to write down on a napkin my contract demands and give it to the owners at our year-end party. And the owners crumpled it up and threw it at me. So at that moment,
good start, Heels.
I knew I'd lost some negotiate skills here, and the balance of power had switched. So they were looking to go into a different direction. Maybe they didn't believe. Maybe they thought it was just a 2-week fluke. I don't know. But end of the day, expansion draft happens, and now envision this: there's 6 of us over in Ireland on the West Coast. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a house phone.
What were you doing in Ireland?
Drinking. What do you think we're doing in Ireland?
From drinking, that's obvious. Was that still celebration from the previous year?
I haven't stopped. We're still doing it now. It's
perfect.
Seems like last week. But, we're having a great time, misbehaving. Every old pub you could ever go in, loving the music festival in Lisdoon Varna. We're having a great time. And I get picked up by Anaheim. They call me. Welcome to the
expansion draft.
Can't get a hold of me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The next day, Tampa's allowed to pick one player because they had rules from expansion the year before. Yeah. They picked me. Try to call me. Welcome to the team. No phone, no cell phone, no house phone. No one's picking up. So they're thinking I'm a complete, what? And then the Rangers are allowed then to make a trade, and they trade for me and take me out of Tampa. They had lost John Van Beesbrook, so they wanted to fill his position. They thought I'd be a good fit, even though the Rangers and Islanders never make a trade and hate each other. So it was probably 2.5 weeks after the initial move was made before I even got back to anybody to go, hey, it's me. It's me calling.
I'm back. Were you sober by that point, or were you still in the bag?
Oh, yeah, we were fine. We really good group. We bonded well over there.
Yeah.
It was actually Pat Flatley's mom who, when Pat called to check in on her, she, in her Irish brogue, told him that you're not going to believe it, but Glenn's a Ranger. And we were in disbelief.
That's how you found out?
Made her get the newspaper and read him what it said in the newspaper because we didn't believe it. And at that point, all those years of the New York Islanders and just the great things we had built, ended up, we went, and I was now a New York Ranger. And things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
That team was as good as we were on the Isle. The team in New York was just better. You could see from day one.
Oh, your timing was amazing, because now you're jumping onto the Rangers bandwagon as they're like in a huge arc upwards from a team that hadn't done squat, like in terms of winning the cup, in 54 years to that point.
Well, squat the year before, 2 games or so left to go in the season, the Islanders beat the Rangers in overtime. So that was it for their season. Their season was over.
Shut them down.
I happened to be one of the stars that night in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I came on the ice without my gloves and decided to tell the fans with one of my fingers what I thought of them. And they were pelting beer down and like you name it. And here I was 2 months later. You're now a New York Ranger.
Wearing their uniform.
I love you guys. I love you guys. But yeah, no, it was a year. We started the season in London, England, the Mustard French's Cup. If you recall, we played in a 3-game friendly, and it was, the team was put together. We didn't bring extra players. We just went with our team, and you could see that the team, from Mark Messier to Adam Graves to the Kevin Lowe team, meant business. That the year before, the embarrassment of not making the playoffs was enough to motivate a group that had numerous championships, probably north of 40 Stanley Cup rings in the locker room. And they're proud guys, and they weren't about to fall off their bike second time. And we didn't.
But can you imagine, though, that Heels, like, that's an insane turnaround from missing the playoffs to winning the Stanley Cup that year. That's crazy. Did you guys, at what point in your room did you think, okay, we do have something special here? We've got guys who've done things other places, and we maybe can do something here together?
From day one.
Really? Come on, Heels. Everybody believes it from day one, but
I can bring in my character witness, which is my wife. I can recall the first day of training camp, I said, this team could win. Like, these guys they're fast, they're good. There's nothing that's really missing with this team. The pace of practice was enormous. And Mike, hey, it was a pretty short leash for everybody. So, hey, he's like that milk crate best before, and you only get a short best before with Mike. But man, oh man, can, in a short period of time, can he make a difference? And he did. But you can't have a guy like Brian Leach on your team and not be great. You can't have Kevin Lowe and not be great. You could have 9 of the players on the team could have been captains of that team and on any team. Craig McTavish went from captain of the Oilers, took the biggest face-off in Ranger history, but took a 4th-line role. Didn't care. Mike Richter's sweaters in the rafters, like the greatest Ranger goalie of all time, next to the other number 30, which is me, but they just put the wrong name on the sweater.
No, it's the wrong name. It's just the name. The number is the right number.
You had the Swedish guy, whatever his name is. But quite frankly, it was a really good, deep team. And even as good as we were at the trade deadline, we still made your show really good because we made like 6 trades. So
were you not, be honest though, were you not worried in the final? Were you not worried that it was slipping away from you after all that you guys had accomplished?
Well, it's funny how your emotions go, but after game 1, we outshot them probably 3-1. Yeah. I think it was 52 to something, 12, 14. They won. Oh boy, that's a tough one to lose because, you worked hard to get there. Yeah. 1, you deserve to win, and now you're down 1 and you've lost home ice. The next 3, we kind of handled them pretty good. Because we got our act together.
Looked like you got the wake-up call and you were going to be fine.
And then we decided to plan the parade and fans coming in and family coming in.
I remember we went public with all that. Like the parade route has been planned and the Rangers have done all this kind of stuff. And I thought, man, you guys making a mistake here.
Never put the end result first. You've got to work first and the end result comes. And so, it slipped away a little bit. And I can tell you after game 6, we had 2 days off between 6 and 7. And that really helped us to get our heads around the fact that, look, if you had said at the start of the year, 1 game to win it all for the Stanley Cup, would you have taken it? Damn right you take it.
Yeah.
So here we are. And we're going to have home ice. And if you remember the game that night, we stepped on the ice. You couldn't hear John Amirante sing a note on the national anthem. It was a complete bedlam in that building. And that gave us that momentum to go up 2-0 in the first period. And it was the fans that led us along. But we were hanging on by our chinny chin chin at the end. But there's no replays on the score sheet, just a bunch of names on the cup that erased 3 generations of misery.
One name that didn't show on the cup that was there for a big, long part of that ride was somebody who worked in the dressing room, Benny. Yeah. Tell our audience the Benny story.
Well, Benny Patrizzi was a little Italian guy from the Bronx who fought in World War II and was wounded in 1942 or 43 and came to work with the Rangers as a dressing room attendant. And basically, Benny would just pick up towels, shine your shoes. I mean, I can recall going in the room and thinking, those are mine? That's what my shoes look like?
That's because you were too cheap to pay the 10 cents to get somebody to shine your shoes.
So, Benny he would stop in the room each day. We'd do our stretch. Eddie Olachek ran our stretch, and he would, in his Brooklyn accent, he would stop and say, "Let's go Rangers," and he'd carry on. We love Benny, right? And then when we got to game 7, Benny walked and he stopped in the middle of the room. He said, "Rangers," and this is different. And the whole city was putting pressure on us, right from the stock exchange floor to you name it. Like we were wearing disguises so people would.
Well, Heels, it was 54 years.
Hey, you don't have to remind me. And so Benny stopped and he said, "Rangers, I don't care if you win or lose tonight. I love you guys. Let's go Rangers." He's the only guy who put no pressure.
You gave me chills.
And so when we got our cup rings, and we got them a little while later, they had this little thing called the lockout, so we had to wait a little bit to get them. But Benny didn't get one. And Mark Messier made sure that he got a ring. So we reordered rings to get Benny his ring, presented him with the ring. He thought he was getting fired because he didn't get a ring and wasn't really heralded with the group as we got ours, and so thought he had done something wrong and was going to get canned. And we gave him his ring, and he died a year later. So that's Mark Messier. Everybody mattered. And Benny Patrizzi, who had very little to do with that cup, but he had lots to do with the cup. Mark recognized it. So I'm so proud we did that for Benny. And boy, cute guy who we all loved. He was the best.
It just seems so emblematic, though, Heels, of the guys who were so long suffering through that half century of waiting to get the cup in New York. It just seems like, I don't know, just poetic justice, the way it all played out.
So when they redid the dressing room, Mike Richter and I used to sit in the back corner, side by side. There was a little bit of a pole in the way, so if Mike Keenan said something stupid, we could, under our breath, shut your effing mouth. What an idiot he is! You saying something back there, Richter, Healy? No, nothing
over here. Nope.
So when they redid the dressing room after we had won the cup, there were like 5 urns of bodies above where Mike Richter and I were sitting. So again,
seriously.
So these fans, my dad hasn't seen a championship, and they would take their ashes and put them in the ceiling, and they could hide behind the pole and do it, so you couldn't see on the tours.
Oh man, I've never heard that story before.
People watching us, for no wonder they had their eye on us the whole time. But anyways, that just shows the passion. Like, these people just desperately wanted to see championship. And I can still recall going to the games, and you would see an Ed Jockman sweater.
Yeah.
You would see a John Davidson sweater, and you'd see a Mike Richter sweater. Like, you had Eddie and John and Mike, and
people with the team forever.
And so you've got your grandfather, your father, and your son. And so those generations got to celebrate something very special. And the parade,
and what a celebration, Heels, in New York.
I don't think I bought a drink since in New York. So, but quite frankly, the city deserved it, right?
Yeah.
They truly deserved it.
Is it true you lost the cup?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to blame the but so after the parade, we were to go to MTV to do a little hit, just to kind of, again, everyone wants to celebrate.
Everyone wants Sally.
Nick and I are the 2 hippest guys. Not really. How do we go to MTV? Now, we're in a police car, but I've got this brilliant idea. we should stop at the oldest pub in New York.
Tradition.
Here, right? Place called McSorley's.
Yep.
Off we go. Siren going, cup buckled in, stop at McSorley's, walk in with the cup kind of gets handed to somebody. We're ordering, and they only have like light or dark beer. You can't order beer, just light or dark, whatever's in
This is before the keeper of the cup, right? So there was nobody with you guys, right?
No, we actually destroyed it, but that's another. So
well, we've got to come back to that. You can't just throw that out there. We destroyed it and leave
Nick
it. So
and I,
go ahead, go to your story.
We kind of turn to look at each other. I look at him, he looks at me, and we say, "Where the hell's the cup? I thought you had it. I don't have it.
I thought you said you had it. Oh, you're in the pub now.
We're in the pub." So the two guys that the least amount to do with winning the cup, not even an hour after the parade, have officially lost it. And so APB goes out to the police to say, well, let's find this thing. They found it like 8 blocks away. The group had taken it and said, we're having our own party. Cup's gone.
Just a second. So you guys are in the pub drinking. Someone picks up the Stanley Cup and leaves, and you don't notice?
Well, it was the mass of humanity. It's not like you're standing there like, the places that, that you go where there's nobody in it. I mean, it was jammed.
Thanks, Heels. Thanks, brother.
I just turned my head for a second. You're signing autographs. And of course, Nick is charging for those autographs because that's what Nick does.
Yeah, that was his opportunity right there.
Chance of making money. But no, it was gone. And we got it back. But there was moments there when we stopped breathing because how the heck did these two guys from Southern Ontario lose the cup the first time they got it? We did.
Is that when you said that? Is that when it got wrecked? Like you kind of just flippantly say we wrecked the cup. Like what happened?
It was, at that time you literally were given the cup and there was no keeper, there was no security. You could just take it. I can recall picking it up at the South Street Seaport. They just drop off the blue case and I put it in the car and I was gone. And it's yours. You pull up at the airport that day and the customs asked me, what's in the case? I said the Stanley Cup. They didn't even look. They're like, oh, okay. Could have been James Duthie in the case. I don't know.
He would have fit.
But yeah, the cup, somebody, and you'll have this habit of lifting it from the top.
Yep.
And
get a drink out of it.
It's not to be lifted from the top. And one of our players did, and the top came off. Now you got
not ideal.
Not ideal. It's not a chalice. You don't pass the cup and the top part around. You need the whole thing. So he decided to solder it, which is a smart thing, except don't use lead solder. It's a silver cup.
Oh, man.
So that changed. And so Phil Pritchard and Scott North and his group, we've got them jobs now for the rest of their life. And they have been to every Stanley Cup party. And we've gotten no kickback by giving them that employment.
They should give you points on their salary since they made a career out of it now.
Take Aeroplan points. Just get me into a lounge because I'm super prestigious. Please. Something.
So you have your run with the Rangers, and now you're a few good years there, and you end up finishing your career as a Toronto Maple Leaf, your last 4 years. You grew up, for those who don't know this, you grew up just outside of Toronto in Pickering near the nuclear plant, which explains an awful lot about yourself. You have an opportunity now to decide where you want to go. You end up in Toronto, but much like the Islanders versus the Rangers thing, you almost ended up at the absolute antithesis of being a Toronto Maple Leaf because you almost ended up as a Montreal Canadian. How did that?
My glass shaking?
Does it give you the shakes now, even still 25?
No, you know what? Hey, at the end of the day, I was negotiating with both teams. There was a couple teams. There was only 2 free agent goalies at the time. There was Andy Moog and me. That's it. Right? And so, Montreal was a team that was interested, and their offer was clearly better than Toronto. Ken Dryden was the general manager of the Leafs and very reluctant to make any move in any way. We all know Ken, very thoughtful. Yeah. And so I got down to the end and I came into Montreal. Clearly, I couldn't work anything out to make it make sense financially. And so I went and got my medical done with Dr. Mulder. I passed with flying colors. I don't know how, but I did. And then was sitting in did the tour of the dressing room. It was beautiful, majestic.
Welcome to Montreal.
Oh my goodness. The pipe band played me in. It was just a parade. It was beautiful. And I'm sitting in the coach's office. They're all there. The general manager, Ray-Jean Newell, Dave King was the coach. And I call my agent to say that. And this is like, I'm all excited. This is great. The dressing room's great. Everything's great. And in the interim, my agent had called Ken Dryden and said, he's signing with Montreal. No, he's not. He's signing with Toronto. Well, your offer's not good enough. So he matched the offer. So all excited in Montreal. This is great. They want to have a press conference, blah, blah, blah. All I hear from my agent is, get out.
Get out fast and keep your head down.
So now I've got 6 esteemed hockey minds looking at me, and I'm, get out. Define that. How am I supposed to get out? Right? So
send a car.
Anyway, I did come up with a story to let me escape the office and potentially, if I wanted to sign, come back later that day to do it. But I had to check with my family and all those excuses that, I felt like Ralph Cramden on Who Wrote Swanee River, for those that are younger, Google it, you'll figure it out. It shows my age. But anyways, the left, and then that night called Ray-Jean Newell to let him know that it was my dream to play in Toronto, and his dream probably to play in Montreal. So respect what my dream was, and I'm going to play in Toronto. And he hung up on me and had a couple swear words, and that was it. So
you got to throw on a Toronto Maple Leaf jersey.
Yeah, which to me, hey, I can still remember when I was 5. There's only a few things I remember. I don't know what you probably are in the same boat as me. I remember crying first day of kindergarten. I remember that. I remember skating for the first time. Remember that. Not very well, but I remember. And I remember watching the Leafs win the Cup in '67. That's it. Yeah. And I don't think I remembered anything from 5 till 10. I don't know where those 5 years went, but I don't remember.
You're still celebrating the '67 win.
But that was, again, your father comes over and mom comes over from Scotland, and everybody tells him, the Leaf, that's the team you got to watch. And, Conn Smythe was a military guy, so it was a natural thing. And so I thought they'd win the Cup every year. Every year. They just keep winning it.
Yeah.
And so became a Leaf fan then, and then, got a chance then to, put that sweater on. That was a dream. But beyond that, it was more the challenge of doing what we did in New York.
In New York, yeah. Finally bringing a winner to the city.
3 generations again. And can you imagine if you could do it in Toronto? And whoever
you had a good run in '93.
We had good runs in each of the years.
99, sorry, in 99. Yeah.
Semifinals, we lost to New Jersey. The Niedermeyer incident, that took some wind out of our sails, to say the least. Should have beat Buffalo. They went on to lose to Dallas. Could have beat Carolina. We were that close to being up 2-0 on the road. Yeah. They scored late to tie the series at 1-1. So there were opportunities, but it's a hard trophy to win. And there's always 23 other guys that are looking at you going, not by me today, son. Like, it matters to me too. So, but a good effort in every way, and good teams and well coached. Pat Quinn was a wonderful man again. So I had the pleasure of having Pat twice, but some really good coaches in my career, which it helped to mold me in that second journey that I have.
For sure. In conversation with Glenn Healy, the executive director of the NHL Alumni Association, 15 years in the NHL, on the 7-Eleven Overtime podcast. You mentioned briefly in passing, you got piped in. That's been a big part of your life. I tell you what, I've enjoyed watching some videos of you, because it's not just a pastime for you. You've taken bagpipe very, very seriously, and it's taken you to some pretty incredible places around the world, including Vimy Ridge. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a very unique instrument, right? And I would highly
recommend
that. You need at least 2 full doors in your house to find a place to play, because your wife and kids and dogs aren't going to like it. I'm just letting you know, it's a loud instrument.
It is what it is.
For me, it has led to so many great things. Having the chance to play with Paul McCartney. Mulligan Tire is the song that he plays with the Pipes.
Did you actually meet him? You played with him? Did
he was gracious. When he first came in, they told us we were going to do a sound check the day of the concert at 4:00, or he was going to tune his guitars at 4:00. And Paul McCartney's got like 40 guitars on stage. Like, And so and he does them all himself. He doesn't hire someone to do it. He does it. But the one guitar he plays with Mulligan has to be tuned to the instrument, has to be tuned to a different pitch. I can't go to him. He's got to come to us. And so at 4:00, sure enough, the call went out. Yes, he wants to do a sound check with the pipe band. And we raced out to do it. And he walked around to every single person and shook every single person's hand.
That's awesome.
And, he said, here's the deal. Band on the run. Yesterday, Mulligan, let it be. We'll come get you at 11:14. And at 11:14, they came, they got the band, and the band came up from the floor of the stage. And it's an 18-beat hold while it's just drones that get mic'd across the entire crowd, and then the melody kicks in. And I've got a great picture of him. He signed it for all the guys. Everyone got one. And if you look at it closely, you see this little white head up like this over the stage. It's Matt Sundin, because Matt's had his eye injury against the Ottawa Senators and couldn't travel with the team.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, he couldn't go on a plane.
So Matt's is in the picture. Now it's just a little bit of his hair when he had hair.
When he had hair.
That is Matt Sundin on stage with the pipe band. But yeah, that was great. We did the concert at Carnegie Hall for 9/11. Yeah. Again, very powerful, moving. That was a tragic time. We were the last Canadian band in to Ground Zero when they had the first year, the anniversary. The D-Day beach is exceptional. Just, again, powerful and moving. To think that the day we were there, the tide was the same as what it would have been on D-Day. And I'm telling you, the courage and the ability of these guys to get and take that was beyond belief. But Vimy Ridge was a real powerful one, in the sense that you could literally throw a football from one of the German side to the British side. And how we took that ridge, and it was the birth of a nation for Canada, is beyond me. They would train in armaments and just lob them one after another. And I recall the day after we had the actual event at Vimy where we represented Canada, there was a parade, and it was in this little town called Arras. And Corey Cross actually came and took part in the parade as well. I'm inviting all these guys to our fun events. But as we got closer and closer to the city square where the Queen, the President, and the Prime Minister were, it was like 10 deep, 12 deep, 20 deep, 30
Wow.
deep. And then they stopped us before we got to the city square. And then we had the RCMP horses in front of us with a Canadian flag shaved on their rumps. And they stopped me and said, "Mr. Healy, please wait." We waited and waited. And then it was the call. "Ladies and gentlemen, Canada." The place went crazy. And I can recall walking around. I couldn't drink a beer because I couldn't hold one. I had There was a lady in the window, and she's called us up, and a bunch of us went up. Well, she was a 4-year-old girl in that window. When the actual
you're giving me the I got tingles.
She was giving us pocket watches and crystal clocks, and I'm like, "Hey, I never fought. I'm just a bagpiper. Leave me alone." Right? But it was an exceptional experience. One funny remark about it: no one was allowed on the monument. Nobody, until the day of. But we all wanted to get on the monument for a picture, because you can't really be
sure. Yeah, you're right there.
Queen and piping in the military. Okay, doesn't look good doing a selfie. So tried to get on the monument, and the land is actually owned by the Canadian government that the monument sits on. Yeah. And so the band was like, "Heels, you go do the talking." How am I going to get us on the monument, right? So I'm thinking,
you've always been a good negotiator.
I'll do my best. So the door opens for the bus. And there's a guy looking at us. He looks at me. He probably knows what I'm going to ask. And the answer is probably going to be no. And he says, "Heels." Now I'm thinking, I'm in.
How does he know you?
So he's a hockey fan.
Oh, okay.
We're on the monument. This going good, guys. Here we go. Then he says to me, "I'm an Ottawa Senators fan." Not going good, buddy. We're not getting on today. Oh. Anyways, he did let us on, and we managed to take some great pictures. And I don't know who he is, but he was an Ottawa Senators fan. He was a hockey fan, and he let us on the monument. He probably got fired after that, but we had an incredible trip. So yes, piping has led me all over the world doing a whole bunch of different things with a bunch of great entertainers. And it's a great passion. It really is.
Man.
And I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Some of the things that you've gone through is just absolutely insane. And now, I mean, I joke about you being a good negotiator. The stuff you've done with the NHL Alumni Association since, was it 2017? You started with them as the executive director in 2017. When I think of all the guys I grew up watching, I got to tell you, Heels, one of the sad stories I have for me personally is bumping into the Pierre Pilots and the guys, the old guys who played before the real money, who played before the real disability insurance, who played before the benefit packages that you guys ended up getting, and the guys especially today don't get. And I always remember thinking as a young guy in broadcasting, how is nobody taking care of these guys? The NHL, the guys who are currently playing right now, how are they not taking care of these guys? And when you went in there in 2017, quite frankly, those guys still were not being taken care of. There were still a lot of guys who needed counseling, therapy, physical therapy, and sometimes just financial help. And as much as the guys were trying to make it happen, it wasn't happening. But then beginning in 2017, when you took over, to your credit, and the guys who are working with you credit, it's night and day what's going on right now. What did you see when you walked in there on day one, and what are you seeing today?
Well, the one thing I do see is a sweater behind you with a special name on the back. Can't see the whole name, but if you don't know what it stands for, it's called Gretzky. Like, all right. So before I took the job, I met with Wayne and I basically said, okay, baby Jesus.
Which is actually, it's on his passport.
If I'm doing this, I need you in the manger come Christmas morning. Like we need to have you on board, and we need to have Mario on board, and the Flower on board, and Sundin on board. Yeah. And we set out as our mission together to honor the past. That's our mission statement. So there's a foundation of what we are all about. So those names that you just talked about, let's honor the past, because they paved the way for these current guys to go drive on these roads. Yeah. They should be revered. And then my job was pretty simple: is how do I make tomorrow better than today? And I can do that in lots.
Heels, there are a lot of guys who tried to do that same thing that couldn't get it done, man, because the response wasn't like, people weren't rallying around him. Let's be honest.
No, and it's been the opposite for me. And I guess I'm lucky. We built a good team, and maybe it's just the time was right. Maybe it is that moment where we seized it and we said, we're going to make a difference for players. We're going to build up a library of services so that when my phone rings, I never have to say I'm sorry to a player or a wife that calls me and says, I want my husband back. I don't know what's wrong. I don't have to say, sorry, I'm out, don't have any help. Or a kid that calls and says, something's wrong with dad. Can we get dad back?
Well, in fairness, though, Heels, if the resources weren't there, what were you able to do, right?
So what we did was we changed the entire philosophy of what we are. We are not a bunch of guys that are traveling around Ontario playing beer league hockey games. We're not a t-shirt shop. We're not a friendscaping shop. We are a big business with a massive brand that if you were to mimic the Players Association business model and put 400 players into a video game and 400 players into the only alumni hockey card set, no other alumni has their own standalone set. We do. Not even football has that. We have it. So once you make that change and you create that business foundation, then all of a sudden you have a chance at creating some of these library services that players need and can utilize, whether it's mental wellness, whether it's mental wellness in the United States, whether it's a chief medical officer who's one of the best neurosurgeons in the world. All of that stuff, yes, requires a business base, but we totally changed the model to we're no longer friendscaping. We are going to make a difference for players. And it was not as difficult as you may think, but we had to have the right people. I was not even a licensed lawyer, as I was told by the league, but I damn well went and got one.
I was going to say, just find one.
I already had them in the car waiting, so just stay in the car. You'll be in a second.
Yeah.
I didn't have a licensing lawyer. We grabbed one of the best in the world, Adam Larry. So we built ourselves a team of some big people that are good at what they do in the game. And like not the player's standpoint, but from a library services standpoint. But, now my phone doesn't have to ring, and sorry is what I say. We have answers for a lot of families that are just looking for help and hope. Look, I'm selling alumni whiskey. I'm not selling liquid. I'm not. You may drink it. I'm selling help and hope. I take that money that we make from the whiskey and I go put together a team of social workers that can do what I can't do with my Western Michigan degree. And hey, I worked at the Pickering nuclear power plant. That does not give me the right to handle a suicide call or someone that's got an acute intervention. And I think that's the biggest thing. If we look at everyone's journey as a triangle, and the top would be acute intervention. So that would be a player who needs to go to rehab or is really in a bad spot. It's all the stuff around that we built up, the player services, the library services. We've inverted the triangle so that we don't get players to the top of the triangle for acute intervention. So that's been our focus. It's taken a number of years to create. And I'm proud to say that when I leave and turn the lights off, the next guy turns them on, it'll be a better place.
Wow. What's next? What needs to happen next?
Healthcare. That's what I want. And I'll say this with the league. You probably wouldn't even have noticed this, but when training camps open, I always knew when my medical was, right? I had a physical every year. Day one of camp, get my physical.
Yeah.
Then I retire and what physical? I don't need one. I'm fine. Yeah. I wouldn't even begin to ask when your last physical was, right? Who knows? No. But, as players, we knew what it was, and then we went a long time without it. And there are a couple players that maybe if they'd got some attention, Brian Marchment, maybe there would be a different result, or maybe a Dale Howarchuk, if Ducky had a chance to go in and get a medical in
found out sooner.
And so when training camp opened, every alumni, no matter where you played, you live in Calgary, you go into the Calgary doctors. So Gary Bettman, Colin Campbell, and Bill Daly opened up their doors, and we had over 300 players get medicals on the day that the players got their medicals. And we uncovered a whole bunch of medical issues that we never would have uncovered. PSA levels that are high, prostate cancer issues, heart murmurs, pacemakers. And so, there's a small example of, a little tweak, but the final stop for me, let's get healthcare for all the players. Let's not, and I get we have healthcare in Ontario and Canada, but you really, if you're a great player and you're in the Hall of Fame, you really need to die in a ward with 3 other people watching you. Yeah. Can we not have a little bit more dignity than that and have that ability to pay them back for what they've done? And so I won't stop till I get that.
It's about time, brother. It's about time. Yeah. Guys just getting what they worked so hard for so many years. Man, I got to tell you, Heels, there've been some fun stories, but there's some really, really encouraging stories of stuff that's going on and some great moments. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing these stories with us. We're excited about where you're going with this, and I hope you just keep telling us and giving us, where you're going next and what you're doing next, and give us some ideas and stories that we could share, because there's so many great stories out there right now.
Yeah. And, that's the greatest thing, right? The players that have built this game, they deserve it. They earned it. They deserve it. And we'll keep pushing until, hey, I can make tomorrow better than today for anybody. And then when I get to tomorrow, I'll worry about the next day. I'll worry about Saturday when I get to Friday. And when I get to Saturday, trust me, I'll make Sunday better too. So, but we've got a great team. And what makes it are the players. They're the ones that have gathered and rallied and said to me, we got your back. Go do what you got to do. It's the players. It's not me. Can't do this alone. And it's all those guys that are up in the rafters. It's all the guys that are in the Hall of Fame. They're the ones that have done it, and they've rallied, and they're not, this is a big brand, and they are not stopping till we get what the players think we deserve, nor will I.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Glenn, great catching up with you, buddy. Take care of yourself.
Cheers.
NHL Alumni Director and Stanley Cup Champion, Glenn Healy. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by 7-Eleven. Before leaving the rink, order your favorite Slurpee, fresh 100% premium Arabica coffee, hot from the oven pizza and wings, pint of ice cream, or even a carton of milk, a dozen eggs, and a loaf of bread from the 7 Now app, and Team 7-Eleven will have your order ready for pickup 24/7. Hey, if you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca, where you can both listen and subscribe to future shows. 7-Eleven's Overtime Podcast can be found on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or at any of your favorite podcast platforms. Until next week, I'm Gino Reda saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the 7-Eleven Overtime Podcast.